What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sounds About Right. I'm your boy Nibs520. That's Uncle Nate. And we got a special guest with us today, Nicole. She's here to talk about head injury shit. Motherfuckers in sports get their noggin fucked around a whole bunch. She's here to tell us the technical side of it. She's got a master's degree and all kind of other shit in dementia. So I'm gonna let her give her credentials, let her run it down. So in case y'all want to fact check, here she go.
All right. I am Nicole Thomas. I'm from Dementia Capable Southern Arizona. We are housed at Pima Council on Aging. So my role is doing community education, letting people know what is dementia, what are some of the signs of it, how can you get screened for it, doing some caregiver education as well.
Wonderful. We appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and speaking the Sounds About Right. We talk a lot of shit about football and sports and boxing and all the majors. We talk about anything in general, but it's always good to have somebody who actually works in the field of head injuries, dementia, that can come in here and tell us what it is. Nate, I'm gonna let you roll with it, man. What you got for us today?
All right. So, a couple of questions off top. And I want to history-wise, right? One of the things that pops in my head, especially when it's referring to, because I'm dementia, CTE, all of that.
Mhm.
One of the questions that pops into my head is why is it that it wasn't as predominant, it seems like, in prior years? So and when you talk about players from the 60s, the 70s, even in the 80s, well, I get no, not the 80s. They messed up. So why don't we see it more from those eras, or do you think it happened and just wasn't diagnosed?
It absolutely did happen. It was especially, there really wasn't a lot of research into sports besides boxing. Boxing, it was actually 1928 when they started describing what was then, they started calling it punch drunk syndrome, and is actually known as dementia pugiglia, I think. And it's a form of dementia specific to that was happening a lot with boxers. It was also happening in other sports, but really hasn't been until the past couple of decades that people were realizing this is what it is.
Okay. And then on that, so I guess it's kind of in a way like PTSD. Like PTSD is what we call it now for
Mhm.
for warriors. Before it had different names, but it's the
Yeah, it
same
was
thing.
still happening. People weren't calling it that. There's also
Mhm.
a lot of it is that stigma. There's a lot more, it's okay to talk about it now. It's okay to acknowledge that this is happening. So I think people are just more aware of it and open about it.
So when we had all those boxers back in the day, we was just calling them punchy. They was really going through some things.
Yeah,
Is what you're saying.
most likely, yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising, right? Getting hit in the head.
Right.
Yeah.
And you talk about that. And me and Nate have talked about this a couple of times on the show. Especially now with all the attention that comes with like CTE, the concussion movie that came out, which was a great film. Will Smith did, brought the attention to CTE as a whole in football. You look at a lot of some of these older players that people thought, oh, this dude's just going crazy. Oh, he's just he's losing his shit. He's wilding out. Then we find out after they passed away, oh, well, he had a legitimate issue, right? So now that we're able to actually, put a name to it, we know what's really going on. Do you think that there are even more players, that played in the 60s, 70s, 80s that are still around that are not getting the care they need going forward?
There almost definitely are. There was pretty recently a big article about the dementia or the CTE settlement in NFL that started in 2015. One of the things that they found is that there were way more players impacted than they kind of expected at first. A lot more players requesting settlement money. There have been about 1,600 so far that have gotten settlements from that CTE settlement in, 7 years. A lot of them are also getting denied. So There were about 900 that were dementia specific. About 1,100 other ones got denied for dementia by the doctors that NFL has kind of required to do this. At least 300 of them had been diagnosed by the NFL doctors. Yes, they definitely have dementia related to these CTEs. And when it got to the legal point, the lawyers were saying, no, we don't think that is what it is. So more of the cases related to dementia have actually been denied at this point than paid out. The value of those is estimated at about $700 million. So obviously there is a big incentive to not approve every case that comes up.
So what would be some of the, because that sounds like odd to me. What would be some of the baselines for denial? I mean, like to me,
So
yeah,
the
common
the
sense
way.
says it's like so common sense says, okay, you have dementia,
Mhm.
you got hit in the head for the living, we made billions of dollars off of you. Let's get you some money. I mean, that's what
Mhm.
common sense says. So like what would be a basis for denial on that?
Well, not only common sense, but even in a lot of cases, their own doctors were saying, "Yes, this is what
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is." They are. There are a lot of other things that can mimic symptoms of dementia. So three of the cases that I heard about at least were, no, it's a vitamin deficiency. No, you just have depression. It's not dementia. Or no, it's sleep apnea. You just have sleep apnea. It's not dementia. So all kinds of other things that they're saying, no, it's probably just something else. There were also, I believe, 14 so far that they found who died, and it was verified later that they definitely had CTEs. 8 of those had been diagnosed with dementia as well, and they were denied those settlements. No, you don't have it, and they died before they could get a payout. And they definitely were confirmed to have it.
So, like in addition, so like one thing that trips me up, right, in the process is like you said dementia related to CTE. Okay, cool. And then you also mentioned there's things that could mimic dementia that aren't dementia. Okay, cool.
Yes. Mhm.
But wouldn't they have the same root cause? So even if you don't necessarily have dementia, couldn't you actually have been hitting the head so hard so many times that okay, now you're depressed because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain because you got mollywopped. Like, doesn't that make
Oh,
yeah?
it absolutely could be. And I believe in theory that the settlement is supposed to cover a lot of other conditions and has covered other conditions resulting from CTE besides dementia. But their criteria for diagnosing some of these things is
Mhm.
quite a bit more stringent than like the US medical criteria for diagnosing it. I'm presuming are purposely making it, you have to meet this threshold and we have to, it has to show that it's this, and this, and
Mhm.
not just because, yes, this is common
Understood.
sense says that that's what it's from.
Yeah, and some of that, I mean, it comes like because the reason why I like brought up the older players is because we look at the clips, man, and like you see how they got hit, and then at that time, I mean, like me and Nibs, we about on the borderline of how you take it age wise, but like I remember a lot of times, oh, you got buzzed, and that's high school football. We're not talking about pro football. Oh, you got buzzed. Oh, okay. Snap out of it type stuff.
Mhm. Walk
Oh,
it off. Yeah.
yeah. You had a concussion. You got knocked out, but you're awake now. So let's go.
Man up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How many times you heard that?
Hmm.
Oh, you're seeing three. Just hit the one in the damn middle. Like that type of a thing. And so, and,
That's
and,
real. That's real.
and so like if we were experiencing that, I mean, and we're joking, I'm kind of blown out of proportion, but if I tend to do that, but if you go back, like, because that's how it was, like in the '90s, like, you know, '90s, early 2000s. So if you're going back to like the '70s, I'm pretty sure, like, I think I saw someone take a baseball bat to Terry Bradshaw's head, like in a football game. I think a linebacker. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm like that's how bad it was. I think but like on a serious note, I think he talked about getting clubbed by a guy who had like a in the head with like a like cast
Like
on.
a
It's
cast, yeah.
wow, like actually getting hit in the head with the cast. So like, they messed up.
Oh,
Is basically what I'm trying to get to. So that's why I wanted to go back to the older people, and I'm pretty sure that's not talked about. And then again, as you mentioned, that's a generation where they don't talk about that. They don't
mhm.
talk about. I mean, it's hard enough for us in our 40s to do it. Them dudes in their 60s, 70s, they ain't talking about nothing like that. So yeah, I was kind of curious about that. So
Yeah,
good,
I
good
mean, I
show.
think with dementia in general, and that's one of the big things with my role is that we don't talk about that still a lot of the
Mhm.
time. You know, it's the sixth leading cause of death in the nation, and Arizona is the fourth leading cause of death. And we just don't really talk about it very much. We don't know what to look for. We don't know, how to address it. We don't know how to help people until you get to the point where you need to learn that.
I have a question. So, you speak to not only the guys that got, in the settlement,
Mhm,
unfortunately, we can't diagnose CTE until after
mhm,
you die, right? You have to examine the brain, right? They have to pass away to without a doubt say, yes, this person had CTE. It's why Junior Seau killed himself, so people could say, hey, yeah, this guy had CTE. I'm not just crazy, right? The guys that of those you said, what was it, 9,900 something like
uh,
that didn't get approved, some shit like that.
900 got approved, 1100 did not get approved, dementia related.
So
Mhm.
out of those 1,100, and you said about 300 of those guys passed away, is there something that could have been done had they gotten approved to help prolong their life after the fact? Like once you get, it's cool to say, yes, you have dementia now, but what is it that can be done for these guys that have it? Even the lawyers in the NFL
Mhm.
say you have it. Hey, here's what we can do for you going forward. Or even the guys who may not necessarily have it, but are on their way.
Mhm.
What is something that can be done to help prevent them, or at least give them some sort of quality of life?
Well, in theory, part of the CTE settlement does include medical care once that is confirmed. So it does provide medical care for the ones who are alive. Um, the drugs that we currently have, there's no cure. It is to kind of slow the progression of some of the cognitive symptoms, and also making sure, is there someone there taking care of them? Do they have a caregiver? Especially as it advances, they're more and more reliant on caregiving, stuff like that. So we can definitely, we're moving in the right direction as far as being able to slow it down. The prevention tips as far as reducing your risk are pretty similar also in some of the ways to slow down that progression. How healthy are they living? Other than that, are they eating right? Are they getting physical activity? Are they staying cognitively engaged in something, that social interaction? All of those things are going to continue to be important with the progression as well.
So real quick, and then Nate, I'll let you jump in.
Mhm.
I The follow up question I had to that is that we know what it is when we see it, right? Most of us have seen someone with as you spoke to earlier, Alzheimer's is probably one of the bigger
Mhm,
forms of dementia.
mhm.
We've probably all, unfortunately, and people who never played a down of any sport, right? We've seen them go through that, and we know what that is when we see it. What are some of the precursors that people can look for to kind of help identify, hey, you might want to go get checked out?
So, a couple of things with that. One of the big things is a lot of the time we do not recognize it until it is very progressed. We kind of brush off symptoms. A lot of the times we tend to have lowered expectations of older adults and think, they're messing this up. They're forgetting this. They're getting they're just getting older, and kind of brushing things off that are not part of normal aging. Normal aging, healthy brain aging, you're not cognitively declining in your skills. It might take a little bit longer to do some things, but you're not noticeably declining as far as your cognitive levels. Some of the things that we really look for, the memory loss, not those kind of, we all forget things sometimes, obviously. Is it really in? Yes, I
I
definitely
forget
do.
everything.
Yeah. Is it a change for you? Is it a big change for you? Are you specifically forgetting a lot more things than you used to? Is it starting to disrupt daily life, versus just kind of occasional, like, oops, brain fart kind of moment? Is this starting to become disruptive? Confusion with time, place, um, familiar things that you used to be able to do really easily, are you having trouble all of a sudden kind of doing those things, whether it's driving somewhere, a game that I follow football every week, I have my team and I follow them and I keep up with them, and now I'm like, wow, what is
So what you're
this? I'm kind
saying
of
is,
forgetting these.
if I ever come into a room and say "Go Packers," somebody should have me checked.
Yes,
Is what
yes,
you're saying? Okay.
yes. And as far as being checked too, I'll kind of do a little plug just for being checked. It's never too early to start doing screenings. We do free, pretty brief, under 10-minute screenings that anyone can call, schedule that, and start doing those every few years, even when you're younger. We want to kind of normalize that. Just like with physicals, any other preventative care, we want to make sure that we're checking on our brain health as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, and I was about to say, like when you said the Packers thing, number one, if you say go Packers, yeah,
Yeah.
at first I'd be like, man, it's an improvement. I'd be like, oh no, something's wrong. And then, well, no, it's like kind of like I was thinking, I'm like, okay, so if I stop rambling and I start
Yeah.
making sense, I need to go get checked.
Yes, people can be like, ooh,
Okay.
what's happening here?
Like, oh, I understood everything he said and it was clear and concise.
By the
Need
way,
to go
nobody
to the
likes him
doctor.
because he's a 49ers fan. Yeah.
It's okay. We got 5. We're going for 6 on Sunday. And yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But no, back on the top, like, so like one of the things that, because I'm, see, here's an example. If I can spit this out right, then that means that I need to get checked. So, but
Mhm.
you got like football players. This is just in my head. I'm thinking like football players. All right, you got big, strong, fast guys. Okay, but they do have padding on. They do have helmets on, and there's not as many of them like as say boxers, because there's thousands of professional boxers. And I'm not talking about the guys we see on TV. I'm talking about the guys who are like at the club. All of that. Why do we see more football players with this particular CTE and dementia than we see boxers? And then also off of that, do we actually see more football players than them, or is it just football's the big money sport and that's what they talk about?
I am going to go with the second option.
Okay.
Boxing, statistically, there's a higher percentage, higher risk associated with that as far as developing dementia. More of them will develop dementia. In other countries, there's no attention to American football, so there are actually fewer studies. In other places, there's all these studies on boxing and soccer and all these things. There are a lot fewer, but here the cameras are always on football players and stuff, so I think part of it is just societal, who's getting the attention.
They don't care as much about Johnny Boxer, who fought at a club his
Yes.
entire career and went like 10-30. They care about Junior Seau. Like, so I get it. And then also, so off of that, do you think that, because I missed a part, but because I believe the top 3 are football, boxing, soccer, correct? Or not in that order? Is that the top
Yeah,
3?
those are three that have some of the highest risk as far as sports and increasing the risk of dementia.
Is it boxing or combat sports? Like, so for instance, is martial arts included in that boxing number, or is that just straight boxing?
That is just straight boxing as far as I know.
So how bad, like if you're just thinking like, how bad do you think as time goes on, because MMA is newer, how bad do you think those guys are going to get? Because they're getting dropped on their head, they're getting punched in the head, they're getting kicked in the head, they're getting elbowed in the head. Like, there's a lot going on there. And then also a lot of them are going through, like, I'm assuming like the weight loss part, like to make weight, just like with boxers, how they have to
Mhm.
drain their weight before a fight. They're doing the same thing. So I'm guessing all of those things play a role. How bad do you think UFC and martial arts will be later?
I would guess that it would be very similar as far as the increased significantly increased risk of dementia.
Yeah, that just makes sense. So okay, cool. And do you
And
think
and
that time frame, like I said,
just to kind of give us some context, how many let's go football, right? Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure damn near every boxer has got something going on upstairs. I don't give a fuck if you Floyd Mayweather. You probably got some problems in your noggin, right? Because you take punches for a living. Let's be clear. But let's say a sport like football or soccer, you know, well, let's stick with football because Super Bowl is coming up on Sunday. On average, how many of those guys are walking around with serious head injuries that they may or may not even know? So,
Um, about a third of NFL players will end up developing dementia if there is CTE involved. Of the group, the one study that they did on that was fairly small, but of the group of football players who had CTE involved, 2/3 of them also had dementia.
so
Jesus.
so if we're comparing that to like the regular population, so we got 1/3 of the football players. What's a 1/3 of like normal working people?
So, to kind of put that, football also and boxing, they also
Mhm.
tend to develop it several years earlier than the general population. Once people get to age over about 85, a third of people 85 and up will have dementia. So an equal number of people significantly younger who played football have the dementia as the same rate of people who are 85 and older, um, out of our population.
If you had to give us an age range, and it doesn't have to be specific, but
No.
because you're talking about the average American, someone who's
Mhm.
never played a sport, never boxed, never played soccer, never at a professional level, right?
Mhm.
Most people play something up until high school, you know, and then
Actually
it's
wore
over.
helmets when they rode their bikes. Yeah,
Right,
regular
right. You know
stuff.
what I
Yeah.
mean? All of that, right? So and then that was another thing. X Games. I can imagine how many head injuries those guys have, but you take someone who's not a professional
Mhm.
athlete in any way, shape, or form. You're talking about these people start in their 80s, right?
Mhm.
What age would you expect someone who's played a professional sport like boxing or football to show they're having dementia or symptoms of CTE?
So from what I've read, at least, the average age of onset. So for Alzheimer's specifically, average age of onset starts at 65, increases with age. For these people in high impact sports, it's beginning at least 5 to 8 years sooner than other people. So 50s. In some of the specific cases, more specific cases, you're seeing signs in their 40s that something neurologically is going on there.
Wow.
So we're talking about half the time.
Yeah.
No.
And one of the things that they're finding, I had kind of mentioned, the Purdue is working on this like mini brain model, basically to see how things impact, how does an impact happen? And we kind of are used to thinking, okay, we're going to wait a couple decades after these and start seeing if they have symptoms. And what they're finding is immediately upon impact, the proteins are changing in the brain. There's a big surge of proteins that are happening within hours of that impact, and it affects the proteins that the brain is producing. They're being kind of misfolded, basically, the new ones that are being produced. So within hours, their brain is creating proteins that down the road are going to likely cause problems.
And then, jeez. So, all right. So because I'm curious about that, especially like leading in where you said like the automatically. So in football, we see the big impact normally. We see the big hit. We see the guy, hitting his head on the turf like two of a couple years ago, and they're just like the scary ones. So those are those major impacts. In boxing, we see more smaller impacts because it may not be that big vicious knockout that those happen, but it's more little. Um, And then also like in football, even going back to that, you have offensive linemen who offensive linemen, defensive linemen, they're hitting the heads on a regular
every
basis,
play.
and it's not big. It's not something that you see. So, can you do you have an idea of how like the little ones adding up versus the big
They
ones chalking off?
definitely add up. There is a pretty direct correlation between how many years that someone is in, football or
Mm,
boxing, because it's not just professional level either, especially with boxing. Amateur boxers, the longer that they're in it, even from teens, they're not going into professional levels, but the longer that they're in it, there's a significant increase in the risk of them developing dementia just from repeated, maybe not huge blows, but over and over and over again.
yeah, because they got headgear. And then off of that, sorry, because you popped up another one in my head. You mentioned the teens. So like common sense or something societal norms would say you're younger, you're healing faster. But at the same time, you're growing. So taking those smaller hits, say like our Pee Wee football leagues,
Mhm.
our our high school football, up to high school football, how much damage, or like in boxing, I want
Mhm.
and go global with it. Like soccer in countries is a religion, so like they are starting at 6 years old and they getting tripped and hit and they're heading and all that. How does how does it impact you as a youth? Does it Is it
Mhm.
worse or is it
It
straight up?
it somewhat depends on the age. With football specifically, as far as the research that exists, amateur levels football, there's not a significant increase as far as like people who played in their teens. Amateur football, there's not a big jump in the risk of
Mm,
developing dementia later. Um, about under 14,
mhm.
the brain is still really really developing, and it's going to be a lot more harmful to get hit in the head with force under about 14. Obviously never going to be a great idea at any age. Under 14, there's really a lot more damage that can be caused by it though.
Okay, so and that kind of makes sense because like I'm pretty sure a guy who weighs about 250, 260, runs like a 4.2, 4.3 40,
Mhm.
running into you is a
Right.
lot different than a 16-year-old that weighs 180 and runs like a 5 flat 40. There's a bit of a difference, so
Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay, so that's one of those where, okay, if it's a little impact, it's not that bad. But when you
yeah.
start talking
And
about the big impacts,
I think some
okay.
of the other benefits of playing the sports might also help kind of balance that out, because
Mm,
physical activity in general is going to lower your risk. So I don't know, conclusively, but my guess would be that there's a little bit more balancing out of that because they're more physically
uh,
active than some of the other people at that age.
and they're probably eating healthier. They're
Mhm.
okay. I
Yeah.
got you. All right, I got you, Nicole. I got you. I got you. Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
Nick brings up a great point, and we talked about this earlier. In that, you know, my question off air was, you got these guys, right? The Floyd Mayweathers of the world, Manny Pacquiao's of the world, Tank Davis, who's the superstar right now out there at the smaller weights, right? I think Tank is 135. Floyd started as low as 130. I mean, Manny Pacquiao started at what, like 108, some shit like that. He was a tiny little guy.
Mhm.
But you look at those smaller weights, to Nate's point, they take a lot more hits than,
Mhm.
say, a Deontay Wilder, a Tyson Fury, a Muhammad Ali. But those guys are taking much heavier shots. Like we all saw what happened to Muhammad Ali in his later years. It was
Mhm.
one of the saddest things to one of our great heroes, right? You see this guy who used to be super boisterous, you know, light up every room he walked into. In his later years, he could, barely shake people's hands. It was sad. You look at a guy like a Deontay Wilder, right, where he didn't even start boxing until what, he was in his 20s. But now you look at those heavy ass shots he's taking, right, as a big man. You're telling me, and you're educated because you know this shit. Like, we talk shit all day. We can talk all that talk, but a guy that big taking those heavy ass shots over maybe 5 or 6 rounds, right, is actually, or can be in some cases, less detrimental than a guy who's been fighting at the lower weights, who's probably going 12 rounds every time out of the gate, but he's taken, 20, 30, 50 clean shots around over the course of 12 rounds. So is it one or the other, or is it like, hey, you're probably going to be better off, as a heavyweight, because if you get knocked out, it's just that one heavy punch as opposed to 100.
Mhm.
They're both going to pretty significantly increase your risk. The force is going to make a difference, though. It is going to tend to increase. Is there an actual traumatic brain injury, which significantly increases the chances of dementia. So the more likely it is for an actual traumatic brain injury, the worse that's going to be in terms of risk factor.
And what it sounds like is it's not necessarily, well, I don't know. Like, because I'm sorry, I just had a competing thought in my head, right? So, because at first I'm like, okay, well, it does, because you said the third and the third, right? So, average population, you hit 85, there's
Mhm.
1 in 3 people who have dementia. However, it's younger. It's like 5 to 8 years younger if you played like professional sports. Okay, cool. But so I'm like, okay, well, it's just earlier. But if it's hitting earlier, not enough of those players, because if it's just this one, right? If it's just dementia, there's so many other things, health problems that could be happening. So these guys probably aren't living to be 85. So we don't
No,
get to know.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So I just had
one of
like a
the,
competing thought. That
yes,
was my
no,
competing thought.
no,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. It was some of the, statistics that we have as far as populations that tend to have more. So women tend you have twice as much higher rate, as men. It's not necessarily all because like women have higher risk factor. Women live longer. So as the age is going up, that risk factor is going up. So part of it is just that they are not living as long in general. So they would probably have even higher rates if they were.
Gotcha. And then another question I have for you, because again, it's all about like the brain impacts.
Mhm,
So I was like, I'm thinking back to some fights. It's been a while. I don't know names, but there's been people who died in the ring, right?
yeah.
And typically when they die in the ring, it's the punch accumulation
Mhm.
versus the single shot. Is that the same? So that's basically the same theory here, is that, okay, you got punched 1,000 times versus 500 times. The 1,000 times is going to be worse than the 500, even if the 500 are bigger.
Yeah, and
And
it's
then,
also going to kind of depend on the type of dementia, because Alzheimer's is that most popular one, or not
Mhm.
popular, most common one. But there are also other forms of dementia. So a lot of people don't have the Alzheimer's specifically. The repeated punches, any force, any amount of force, that's when those proteins start kind of accumulating to where the injury was. That is what causes Alzheimer's. Specifically, they form kind of plaques on the brain. So, especially with Alzheimer's, some of these are having a lot higher risk of that specific type of dementia because they're, even with several smaller force ones, they're having a lot more of those protein accumulations.
and it's the same type of thing as like, and then like, because like you mentioned, Nigel, like Nibs, you mentioned the uh like the 130 guy taking more shots.
Right, right.
Isn't that also amplified by, like, for instance, like Tank Davis? Let's pick on Tank. He
Yeah,
has a reputation of a weight gain issue and trying to lose weight before a fight.
yeah.
How
We talked about that. Yeah.
that also plays a role. So like maybe correct me if of course it's a correct me if I'm wrong thing, but if you're if you just drained weight, lost 10 pounds of you know was it water weight, and then you try to put it all back on overnight, doesn't that make some of those littler ones that might not even be a plaque become a plaque? Like, you know what I mean? Like how you mentioned the proteins. It's like, okay, well, this was a punch that if he was like Deontay Wilder, who doesn't have to worry about weight, oh, well, that doesn't even impact. Now it's impacting. And then the one that would have the bigger impact now has even it just everything gets magnified Am I
I
correct in
mean, I
that assumption?
definitely wouldn't doubt it, but there's a lot of
Yeah,
other factors that could be playing.
yeah,
Like you said, with the dehydration, if you're running in trash bags trying to lose water weight, um, the dehydration is going to have an effect. If you're doing unhealthy, disordered eating habits, trying to
mhm,
cut weight, that's going to have other impacts that are going to increase, kind of exacerbate some of the other risks. So it all kind of, I would say,
it all
very likely
works together.
plays a role there.
Yeah, dang, all right. So we still walk around with helmets on. I'm
So I
just-
had a question for you, and this is more so of just in general, right? Because we don't all live in the sports world, right? We don't all walk around, we're not all freaks of nature athletically. You know what I mean? We're
Yes.
not all Olympic athletes. Most of your average Joes still get dementia. My question to you is, specific, not necessarily specific, but just for you as an expert in the field. This is what you do every day, right? What is it about dementia specifically, or even just brain injuries, or not even necessarily injuries, but disease
Mhm.
that you want the general public to know? Because we mainly do sports, right? This is what we do,
Mhm.
but at the same time, these things affect all of us,
Yep.
not just the athletes in the family. We've
Yep.
all got an athlete in the family. We know somebody who's dealing with some shit. But let's be real clear, for those of us that aren't going through that, what do you want people to know about brain injuries and or just brain disease in general that we might all kind of not know?
So, as far as dementia specifically, there are some factors that are out of our control. We can't stop getting older. We can't control age, race, gender. We can't change some of the things, genetic makeup. About 60% of the risk factor are things that we absolutely can control, though. So, over half of it are things that we can do to reduce that risk. And it doesn't have to be, activity is a big one of them. It doesn't have to be you're an Olympic athlete, training all the time. Walking, huge risk reduction, just increasing the number of steps, increasing the pace that you're walking at, one or the other or both. Doing house chores, has been shown to, if you're being active in any way, that's reducing the risk. So it doesn't have to be these huge changes that you're making. You don't have to do them all at once. You don't have to eliminate every unhealthy food from your diet all at once and make all these changes. Little changes every little bit really does help with that.
So
So,
you spoke to age and race and things like that, and gender. Is there a race or gender that, I mean, you said men more likely than women? Is that, does it affect black people, Mexican, white, Asian differently? And are there things specifically that those races need to be paying attention to?
So yes, it is not distributed equally across the board in the U.S. So women are twice as likely as men to have it. Again, part of that is just because of they live longer. Um, Black Americans are twice as likely to have it as white Americans. Um, Hispanic Americans, 1.5 times as likely as white Americans. The lowest of the population as far as racial demographic is Asian and Pacific Islander, slightly less than white Americans to have it. So it is not distributed equally by race. Again, a lot of the risk reduction factors, there's a lot of reasons why that could be. Part of it is genetic, part of it is, lifestyle factors. So just the same things that you hear all the time. One of the big things to keep in mind is what's good for your heart is good for your brain. If you're doing, activities, foods that are good for your brain, it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain too.
so as a white man, I got to worry about y'all in this situation, right?
Yeah,
Some more white privilege for myself. Okay, cool.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You're welcome.
yeah. Okay, no, I'm
Yeah,
just obviously
yeah.
joking.
And I'm moving to
Uh,
fucking Japan so they can rub
yeah, yeah,
off on
yeah.
me.
There you go. So okay, and then like so basically, it's and I can see that too, because like as a person gets older, they become less active.
Hmm.
As they become older, they don't eat as well
Hmm.
because so I can definitely see that, and that's why like the longevity of your life You know, what is it like? It's like if you're playing bingo. The longer you play, the better chance you have of getting bingo. So this is
Mhm.
just the bad bingo. I got you. Okay, that's crazy. Um, what are there like certain, for instance, types of? Is it like eating vegetables? Like I'm curious about that because I know you said good for your heart.
Like diet,
Yeah, are there
so
certain foods that like because they talk about superfoods all the time and stuff like that. So like, are there certain vegetables or something like that or fruits that are more beneficial for your brain? Is what I'm trying to ask.
um, nuts, beans, um,
Hmm.
leafy vegetables, berries, all kinds of things. If one thing that I think is a fairly easy change, that has been shown to be pretty helpful is using olive oil. Like if you're cooking with
Hmm.
oil or something, using less butter, other types of oil, using olive oil. Um,
You're done, Nigel. You're just
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
out.
it's a
You're out.
wrap. You know what I mean? I got to
Uh,
give up bacon or fried chicken or something. The horror.
just the butter aspect is murdered your
And
entire
that's not
process.
happening. Let's move on from that.
that's again, you don't have to change everything at once. Every little bit really does count. There's a diet called the Mind Diet,
Mm,
that is very much geared toward reducing dementia. There are about 15 kind of checklist items that you can do. Eat this one
mhm.
more, eat this one less. But for every one that you do, it is reducing. So you don't have to do like I need to do all 15 of these things. I need to completely change the way that I eat. Each one that you do will reduce the risk somewhat.
Okay, and then yeah, because I'm guessing. I mean, because Americans we have awful diets as a
Yeah,
whole,
yeah.
so that's probably why. Okay, and we're not exactly the most active group,
No.
the
No,
most active country out there.
no.
Um, I mean, luckily I'm sitting, so then that way you can't see the belly. Okay, now I got you.
Nicole, it's been a pleasure. But
Thank you for
before you
having me.
go,
Yes. Okay.
we have a game for you.
All
We
right.
play here. That sounds about right. It's rapid fire questions. Now I'm going to read some questions off for you. You're going to answer them as soon as you can.
Okay.
And Nate is going to ridicule you if you give the wrong answers.
Perfect.
That's just the
Okay.
way the
Yeah.
game works. Now,
It's just who I am as a human being.
yeah. Now, when I read the question off, the rules are this. You get one chance to have the question repeated. Immediately after the question is read, you got 10 seconds to answer. If you don't answer, I'm moving on to the next one. And again, Nate is going to
and
ridicule you.
and there are some of these questions as a just a precursor. Me and Nibs are strongly disagreeing on. So if you can't get half these questions right, someone going to be making fun of you.
I
So
lose either way. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. All right, go ahead.
As
Yeah.
long as you understand, ridicule is going to occur.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And here we go.
All right.
Question one. What sound or noise do you love the most?
Rain.
That's actually good. I like that.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one.
You get to live in one of these four options for free for the rest of your life. Do you choose a treehouse, cabin in the woods, waterfront mansion, or a tiny home?
Cabin in the Woods.
Yes.
Pepsi or Coke?
Pepsi.
Name a
Hmm.
Beatles song.
Um, Let It Be.
She got it.
She got one. She got one. Yeah.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done.
It's classic. Flats or drumsticks?
Both.
Oh,
And in a zombie apocalypse, what would be your weapon of choice?
Machete.
why you letting him get so damn close?
Right. You got to let them walk up on you.
Distance is helpful here.
I would go old school Michonne and have the
Okay.
zombies around me so they're not getting close to
Oh,
me.
you want them? Gotcha. I got you. And you're in the cabin in the woods too, so you all right? Okay. All right.
Is Valentine's Day a legit holiday?
Yes.
She would. All right.
It's a Catholic. It is a Saint's Day, so yes.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you want a dinner, you want some flowers, you want some candies. Is what you're saying.
I'd settle for
In
a
a card.
heart pizza.
Oh, okay. There you go. Okay. Cool.
Yes.
Done. Okay. Shit. That's random Tuesday. I mean, it doesn't have to be
Right.
Valentine's Day.
Right.
Okay.
Ford or Chevy?
I know nothing about cars. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Which foreign language that you do not already know would you like to learn?
Sign language, not a foreign language, but
Universal.
yeah.
I'll count it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. One of these movie franchises has to go. The options are Star Wars, Rocky, Fast and the Furious, Lord of the Rings, or the Avengers. Just one.
I'm gonna go with Star Wars. I'm sorry, everyone.
What? I ain't never watched Star Wars, but the cultural impact of Star Wars, like Fast and Furious has.
Okay, yeah, cultural impact. Then I guess we can eliminate Fast and Furious.
Like, do we really need like Fast and Furious with them out here like doing stuff that's not like possible, like corrupting our kids' minds? No, that's why. And I've watched Fast and Furious movie. I still say get rid of their asses. All right, I'm done.
I don't know if we can invite you back.
I'm sure I appreciate it for other reasons than you do, but that's okay.
That's right. Valid point, man. That is a valid point.
Damn, man. Let me go get some motherfucking aloe vera. Like burn.
Right.
You get one word to describe humanity to aliens. What would it be?
Run.
Accurate. There you go. Skip.
Forks or spoons?
Spoon.
What would be your superhero name?
I can't think of anything appropriate.
The more inappropriate, the better in this group. Yeah, this is an adult show. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna go with. I'll just be like She-Ra Part 2 or something.
She
backed out.
Yeah. Given now that you have your superhero name, with that in mind, would you rather have the ability to read minds or be invisible?
Be invisible. I don't want to know what people are thinking about me.
Accurate.
Which celebrity would you most like to be friends with?
Adam Sandler.
She was quick on that one.
That's a good answer too. That's a good answer.
He's been my celebrity crush since 7th grade, so I'm a little biased.
She has a Waterboy jersey.
I do. It's the only sports jersey I own.
I actually have I have a couple of Adam Sandler shirts. So on my shirt collection. So I got you.
Respect.
Mm-hmm.
Ranch or blue
Different
cheese?
reason though. Different reason, just to be clear though. He wasn't about boyhood crush. Yeah.
I actually like blue cheese.
Blue cheese and no Star Wars. All right. What's the most expensive thing you've ever broken?
Oh, a car.
That's most of us. What kind of car? Now I'm curious.
Well, no, probably not that. I mean, I drive a Mazda, so it's probably not all that expensive.
Okay. If a movie were made about your life, what would be the title?
Head cleaner. I mean, there would be nothing on it. There'd just be like a blank, boring movie.
I know the answer to this, but we have to ask you anyway. Can you drive a stick shift?
Yes, that is what I drive. Yeah.
Okay. If Hogwarts will allow you to study and the Sorting Hat were selecting what house to put you in, which house would you think the Sorting Hat would choose?
Hufflepuff?
I respect the fact that I didn't have to read the houses off. Like she knew.
I ain't seen one of the movies or read one of the books. So I have no idea on that question.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he hates that question, by the way. I just want to point
I'm like,
out.
what?
Yeah.
Are we just trying to get people to say funny words?
This is probably the most important question, but it's not the last one. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
If you like it, it does. No, it doesn't.
What? I'm sick of this shit. Everything you have said in this interview has now been voided out. Like, people, don't worry about your dementia. You'll be fine. No, I'm just joking.
We might have to check her for dementia. No. If you could get any one thing for free for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Food.
Hey, I'm with you. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. Especially shit. Have you seen how much eggs cost nowadays? Shit.
Man.
God damn.
Mm.
Shit. They charging motherfuckers $2 for a bottle of water nowadays. Good Lord. And that's the cheap one.
Yeah.
Last but not least, what is your favorite curse word?
I don't really I curse like Ned Flanders. So I say dang and friggin' a lot. And that's pretty much it.
Wow.
I'm just imagining the episode when like Ned had like a nervous breakdown and like he like had to go to like the crazy house and the whole time it's like yeah, he doing his thing and then it's just not a single I'm just imagining that in my head right now. I'm good.
That's how it sounds when I try to curse. So yeah.
They just slide
Amazing.
out on me. I don't even know I'm cursing half the time.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Sounds About Right. That's Uncle Nate. I'm your boy Nibs520. Give a hand to our special guest, Nicole, coming on and talking to us about dementia. Before we let you go, Nicole, let everybody know where they can find you. We'll put your information in the comments section so they can know where to find you and where to go get that information, further information about dementia.
All right, you can go to pcoa.org, and under Ways We Help, there's Dementia Capable Southern Arizona, and you can find me there.
Thank you again for your time. Nate, it's been a real one, brother.
Yes, sir.